Hi, I'm Dr. George Yancey. Let's share some paradigms. And the paradigm I want to share today is white progressives and racial issues. I label this, why do white progressives support Black Lives Matter? As you probably figured out, white progressives do tend to support Black Lives Matter. In fact, I can show you some research, some data, that shows you that white progressives would support Black Lives Matter more than African Americans in general. Now, to be fair, Black progressives support them a little bit more than white progressives, but in general, white progressives support Black Lives Matter more than African Americans in general. Why is this? Now, some of you may be thinking, well, of course they support African Americans. Some of this is due to their higher level of sympathy for African Americans than perhaps non-white progressives, or perhaps than white conservatives. And I'm not saying there's nothing to that. I would say that in part we have to ask why the sympathy is higher, that it's not just an accident. But yeah, there is some additional sympathy, and I would not deny that. But remember, and just think about this, that the interests of African Americans economically do not necessarily align with the interests of white progressives. Their support for African, if we're thinking about this as in a purely economical model, their support for African Americans and Black Lives Matter comes at the expense, at economically, the things that they may want to push for, they may not be able to push as heavily because they're supporting Black Lives Matter. So why do they support Black Lives Matter? Well, let me start off with one answer that I think has some relevance to it, but then I'm going to move to an answer that I think is more relevant, more applicable. One answer is that white progressives, as I've studied them, they tend to value themselves, they tend to envision themselves as being highly tolerant, highly inclusive. Because they see themselves as highly inclusive, this is on a variety of issues, not just race, but it is race. Their social identity is that we are an inclusive, tolerant group of people. Therefore, how can we not be inclusive to the concerns and worries of African Americans? If Black Lives Matter represents those concerns and worries, of course, we're going to support them. Now, I think there's something to this. I do think that their social identity does allow them to support Black Lives Matter, even when what Black Lives Matter want moves against their economic interests. But I don't think this is the only reason. I don't think this is the only reason. I think a more important reason, even though it overlaps this to some degree, a more important reason is their animosity towards white conservative Christians. One thing that I've learned in my study of white progressives is that the group that they tend to hate the most, or like the least, however you want to put it, is white conservative Christians. I think this comes back to what's been called the culture war. Now, the culture war was developed as an idea of explaining why there is this fight over the morals and values of our society. On the one hand, you had conservative Christians who want a more traditionalist type of morality, one that was against abortion, one that emphasized a traditional family, was critical of sexual minorities. On the other hand, you had a more progressive, humanistic type of group that was more concerned with freedom, sexual freedom, more concerned with reproductive rights, these sort of things. And these groups have been fighting it out. And maybe in a future video, I'll discuss how I think this has expanded into the racial realm. But for right now, just those arguments about abortion and homosexuality and that sort of stuff, that was part of this big fight, and still ongoing fight. And so for white progressives, their enemy are white conservative Christians who fight for these traditional values. Out of that anger towards them, they seek allies. As you probably know, African Americans highly support Democrats, the more progressive wing of our political system, the wing that is going to support issues such as reproductive freedoms, such as sexual minorities, these sort of issues. So because African Americans have proven to be valuable allies to the Democrats, it then makes sense to support African Americans, support their desires so you keep your allies happy. Now, am I just speculating about this? Is this just something that's just coming out of my head and, woo-woo, Dr. Yancey has a conspiracy theory? Well, it's not just a conspiracy theory. In fact, it's not one at all. I actually have an article, a post in the description that discusses this, that shows evidence that white progressives have the enemy of my enemy is my friend approach. And that the support they have for Black Lives Matter is connected to the antipathy they have for white conservative Christians. This is not an accident. This has very real ramifications in our understanding of white progressives. I believe it's not just on racial issues. I think that on a lot of issues, their antipathy for white conservative Christians drives how they look at political reality. Now, why is that important? Well, from a Christian point of view, this is very important because this notes that there's a group in our society which is culturally powerful, as I've explained in other videos. They tend to control academia and the arts and media. That's culturally powerful, that makes its decisions based on the notion, at least partially based on the notion, that this might hurt conservative Christians. In understanding Christianophobia and understanding why it's a problem and who has it, or what they might do with it, I've come to realize that understanding white progressives is critical to be able to do that. And the reason for supporting Black Lives Matter, which you could say is a proxy for supporting the interests of African Americans, is not just because they're sympathetic to African Americans. I'm not denying that that exists. And not even just their social identity, though I think that that's an issue as well. But since there's empirical data that ties their animosity towards conservative Christians to their support for Black Lives Matter, we have to consider why that is. And the most logical decision I can come to is that simply they seek allies in their cultural war against conservative Christians. And this is a way of getting that. Does this shatter some paradigms? Paradigms about white progressives and the support for racial issues? As you probably know, there's plenty of evidence that white progressives tend to support the racial issues that a lot of black activists have been supporting. Does this give some insights into why? And perhaps pique your curiosity to learn more about white progressives? If so, I'm developing this white progressives playlist. I'm doing research on them as a topic, and as I do more research and learn more, I'll be adding to this playlist. Does this interest you? Would you like to learn more about some of the topics I discuss? If so, please consider subscribing to my channel. If this video has been helpful to you, please give me a like. If you want to make a comment, if you like what I said, or if you don't like what I said, please make a comment. All this is very helpful for me and encourages me to keep on doing what I'm doing. Well, thanks for coming by, and I hope you come back where we can shatter some more paradigms.